Freeman Township was born from fire. That's not a metaphor somebody slapped on later for atmosphere. It was born from the smoke of Portland burning in the Revolutionary War, from the wreckage left behind when people needed somewhere else to go, and Maine still had room for necessity. A refuge town, a hill country answer to a city's ruin. Then, after nearly 2 centuries of trying to stay useful, Freeman did something almost unheard of in American civic life. It disincorporated. In 1973, it dissolved itself. That's the strange part. Not that it faded, that it admitted it was done. I'm Andrew Wilcox, and this is Drive-Thru Towns, about Freeman Township, Maine. Now, if you drive through Freeman today, and you get the usual rural disguise, trees, stone walls, a road that seems to remember more than it says, maybe a cemetery if you know where to look, maybe a cellar hole with the light trapped in it like old water. At speed, it looks like any stretch of Maine woods, just quiet, inconvenient, beautiful in the way abandoned things are beautiful when the weather is being generous. But the silence here isn't empty. It's post office silence, schoolhouse silence, railroad platform silence, the kind that used to have names attached to it. Freeman's origin story starts with the British burning Portland. This is awful nice of them. And with the people who got left behind by that event in every sense except the obvious one. The town was settled in 1797 to house the destitute, the displaced, the people who had been roughed up by history and needed land more than they needed ceremony. It's sort of a grim civic foundation, but also a very American one. Take the damage, plant it somewhere else, and call it a settlement. The town didn't grow out of glory. It grew out of burden sharing. Early Freeman was a place where survival was the first industry. Before the records, before the nostalgia, before the local history prose got polished, there was just the hard arithmetic of people trying to make a life on rough ground after a city had been reduced to ash. And that hard beginning mattered. Places born from emergency tend to keep emergency in their bones long after the fire goes out. Freeman sat in hill country, which is a polite way of saying the land made every task more expensive. The soil was rocky. Farming was difficult. You could work it, yeah, but you had to persuade it daily. And even then, often responded like a mule with a grievance. That's a geographic mistake built into the town. It was planted where effort was mandatory and reward was conditional. The land asked for more labor than the market eventually wanted to pay. And in the 19th century, when transportation routes mattered as much as crops, Freeman's location was only as good as the roads and the rails that could reach it. For a while, that worked. There were railroad stations, churches, mills, sort of a civic rhythm. Freeman was not a ghost from birth. It was a functioning rural community, the kind that turned awkward terrain into ordinary life through stubborn repetition. Freeman was never a single crop miracle or an industrial boomtown. Its life was more honest than that. Farming, milling, sheep, timber. The labor of clearing, planting, cutting, hauling, and mending. The town's prosperity came from making a hard landscape slightly less hard, which is one of the oldest human businesses on the continent. The town even grew enough to matter in the regional fabric. By the 19th century, Freeman had cleared thousands of acres and supported a substantial farming economy, including sheep operations that connected it to Maine's broader agricultural life. This wasn't glamorous work. It was more durable than glamour, but you could build a century on it if the rails stayed friendly and the people stayed willing. That's the thing about a town like Freeman. Its industry was not invention, it was persistence. Then the map changed its mind. Those suckers have a tendency of doing that. Railroads and transportation corridors don't just connect places, they rank them. They decide which valleys matter, which hills get bypassed, which towns become stops, and which become scenery. Freeman was not the biggest or easiest place to serve, and eventually, larger valleys and more efficient routes took the traffic and the money with them. That kind of economic shift is almost insultingly mundane. There was no storm, no siege, no single dramatic failure, just the slow subtraction of relevance. A station loses passengers, a school loses children, a road loses maintenance, then the town loses the argument for remaining a town. By the 20th century, Freeman's population had fallen enough that the place could no longer sustain the machinery of local government. The roads, the schools, the offices. The whole administrative skeleton began to outsize the body. So, in 1973, Freeman disincorporated. That phrase carries sort of a special chill. It sounds bureaucratic, almost sleepy. But translated into human terms, it means the town decided it could no longer afford to be itself. It ceased to operate as an incorporated municipality. It became part of the unorganized territory framework. In other words, the state kept the land, but the town gave back the job. There's a kind of tragic comedy in that. After all the labor, all the clearing, all the station building, and church keeping and road scraping, the final problem wasn't rebellion or catastrophe. It was scale. Just not enough people, not enough hands, not enough civic muscle to keep the machinery going. That's how a lot of rural places go now. Not in flames, just in payroll. Today, Freeman reads like a drive-through woods with a memory problem. If you don't know what to look for, you miss it. The cellar holes are swallowed by brush. The cemetery is overgrown enough to look accidental. Stone walls trace old boundaries with the patience of bones. And that's the haunting. The town didn't vanish. It got softened into landscape. You could still stand in a place like that and feel the outline of the old life, where a house sat, where a barn leaned, where a road bent around a field, where winter used to be measured in hay and coal and the long scrape of keeping warm. Now the wind moves through the trees where voices used to carry. The land has resumed its original opinion of the place. That is the modern ghost of Freeman Township. Not decay in the cinematic sense, just absorption. The forest taking back what the town briefly convinced itself it owned. Freeman is one of those places that exposes the bargain underneath settlement. People arrive because they have to, because they're displaced, because the city burned, because the land is available and the need is immediate. Then they stay and build something civic out of exhaustion and hope. Roads, schools, churches, stations. A whole local civilization made from too much work and not enough certainty. And then the century advances. Transportation changes. Agriculture gets consolidated. Young people leave. The government gets too expensive to maintain. The town doesn't fail all at once. It simply becomes harder to justify. And that's the universal part. Every small place lives with the suspicion that the future is being decided elsewhere. Freeman just happens to show the bill more clearly than most. So if you pass through Freeman now, don't let the woods fool you. This was a town made from the ashes of Portland, a hill country settlement built by people who had already lost something and refused to let that be the end of the sentence. It farmed rocky ground. It kept churches standing. It watched the railroads come and go. And when the numbers finally broke it, Freeman did the rare American thing. It said out loud that it could not keep pretending. The cellar holes are still there. The cemetery's still there. The forest is still doing what forests do. And under all that quiet, you can still hear the last civic decision a town ever makes. Not to be forgotten, just to stop. This has been Drive-Thru Towns. I'm your host, Andrew Wilcox. Special thanks to Chloe Jones for providing our music. If you enjoyed this journey, please follow the podcast to stay updated on all our upcoming episodes. To keep the conversation going, you can connect with me on Instagram at 50 State Family. Find me on LinkedIn under Wilcox Legal or reach out directly via email at wilcoxlegal@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next road.
'Cause I was wandering free on an American dream with a million things to see and do. But it's all good, I'm fine. Had the time of my life, 'cause I did it all.